for the president to have an enormous victory.
It would be an enormous victory for the president, because he could say, as we just heard Tony Blinken, his deputy national security advisor, if in fact this were to happen, Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, says not only control all of those Syrian chemical weapons, and there's a lot of them, but destroy them at the same time. If that were to happen and the UN Security Council were to pass a resolution with Russian and Chinese support for that, the president could legitimately say, thank you very much. It was the threat of U.S. force. Bashar al-Assad was so nervous about going down in the face of U.S. pressure, he agreed to destroy his chemical weapons stockpile.
Look, this thing could play out like a good episode of The West Wing. I mean, usually these things get boxed up and they get worse and worse and worse. It could be the case that just like in a Greek theater, things get messed up and then a god comes down from the machine and just fixes everything. Deus ex machina. That could be the case. Literally a misstatement by John Kerry.
We don't know for sure it was a misstatement.
It seemed like a misstatement.
It may have been. There may have been something. But look, for weeks, over the past couple of weeks, people have been saying, experts outside of the government and others have been saying, you know what, there's a military solution, or the U.S. could do nothing, but maybe there's some diplomacy in the middle that might work. And maybe if you could get the diplomats on board, you could avert a warfare, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying this could work out very, very well. Whether he did it on purpose or not, to your point, if the world is smart enough to take up this statement from John Kerry and run with it to get us out of an impossible situation for everybody. Right now, we're in a situation where the President of the United States is likely to lose a vote in Congress, which is unprecedented, which would be horrible, and then he's either going to have to go against Congress, which would be horrible, or he's going to have to stand down, which would be horrible. Right now, the only hope is this possible misstatement from John Kerry that now the world seems to be rallying around.
That maybe it could work, because if you're Bashar al-Assad, and you say to yourself, what do I do? Give up all my chemical weapons and survive?
Sure.
Or not give up my chemical weapons and face the wrath of the United States military.
I have a good friend, Jack Copeland, who knows the Russians very, very well. He's been saying for at least 6 weeks that Putin would solve this if Obama understood how to ask him to do it. Because the truth is, if Putin picks up the phone and calls Assad privately and says, this is it. If you don't cave, they're going to bomb you and we're not going to help you.
Yeah.
There is one trick, though, that could be up his sleeve. Let's not forget, this is Assad. He knows every dirty trick in the book. There is Hezbollah. He can give some of those weapons over and still give his allies some others, so that then he gets to have his cake and eat. I think we still have to let this thing play itself out.
There's a timeliness, because if he's going to agree to this, to keep them under control, there could be 2, 3, 4 weeks or whatever.
That's right.
He could ship some of those. That is absolutely right.
Let's not get too happy for peace.
There have been 4 efforts this year to do that, and the Israelis have bombed all 4. I mean, the Israelis have been very clear. Every time you put a truck on the road to Lebanon, if we think it has something dangerous, we're killing it.
And what's interesting, they've done those 4 airstrikes. They didn't announce anything in advance. They didn't even confirm. They happened afterwards. They just did it, and there was no real response.
Assad just understands it's a tough neighborhood. Again, it'll be interesting to see, even as early as this evening, when the president and you do an interview that'll be on at 6, does the president now start to take into account the possibility that you could actually have a diplomatic solution that is better than anything he had thought of? I mean, that would be,
because that wouldn't only be deterring and degrading, that would potentially would be eliminating Syria's chemical weapons stockpile. That would be a huge political, diplomatic, national security win for the U.S., right? The president would have to deserve a lot of credit for that.
He could take the credit, he would deserve the credit, and I think it would get him out of what's going to be an embarrassing defeat. Which is coming down the road next week.
Well,
very quickly. I just think, to your point, creativity in a crisis. This is what I think people have been hoping for. We wound up down this sort of rabbit hole. My big hope is that if this is not the right creative outcome, there will be others. We don't need another war in the Middle East. There's got to be a way out of it.
Two of the new hosts of Crossfire, Van Jones, Newt Gingrich, guys.